Welcome to Nightmare Narratives, where the shadows come alive and every story leaves a chill down your spine. Are you ready to step into the darkness? Let the nightmares begin. 6 years ago, when I was 17, my dad took our family island hopping in Indonesia. On one of the islands we visited, there was a small market selling handmade souvenirs and coconut water. I noticed a big seashell there. It was coral-colored with an iridescent finish. There were other prettier shells, but for some reason, I felt drawn to this one. I asked my dad if I could have it, and he turned to our guide. The guide had a unique ability. He could see supernatural beings, like jinn. My dad asked him if there was anything attached to the seashell, and the guide assured us there wasn't. So we bought the shell. When I brought it home and placed it on a shelf, nothing unusual happened. Our live-in maid, who had worked with us for years, didn't join us on the trip because of her fear of the sea. She also had a gift. She could occasionally see the supernatural. Once, she told me she saw an old woman sitting on my bed and believed the presence might have come with the seashell. She said the old woman disappeared as soon as she noticed her. I didn't pay much attention to it. My philosophy has always been that if they don't bother me, I won't bother them. 2 years ago, we discovered that our maid had betrayed our trust by endangering my sister. She had given my sister's phone number to debt collectors. We fired her, and I was especially upset because she had raised me, and I couldn't imagine her doing such a thing. I vented my frustrations to friends over the phone in my room. Last year, our former maid begged my mom to rehire her. My mom, being soft-hearted, agreed, though only as a part-time maid, not a live-in one. On her first day back, she went upstairs and suddenly tumbled down the stairs. When we asked what happened, she claimed the old woman, who usually stayed in my room, had pushed her. She said the old woman warned her not to upset me anymore. Once again, I didn't pay much attention. If they don't bother me, I won't bother them. Last week, I went on a vacation to another state with a friend. We had a great time visiting historical locations at night, enjoying the lively nightlife. But as soon as I returned home, I began having nightmares. They were so disturbing that I started playing Quran recitals at night to ward them off. In the nightmares, I was forced to take a newborn baby from a woman, but I always managed to resist, thanks to the help of an old woman. Last night, the dream changed. The woman with the baby was unusually far away, and I saw the old woman restraining her. The old woman bid me farewell. This morning, I found the seashell shattered on the floor. The thing is, I had secured the shell on the shelf with strong double-sided tape because I didn't want it to slip and fall. When I inspected the shelf, I saw bits of the shell still stuck to the tape. The only explanation I could think of was that the shell had exploded before it fell. I believe the old woman in my room came from the seashell. She had been protecting me from the nightmares, and now that the shell is broken, she's gone. I need to find a river to dispose of the broken shell properly. A little backstory. Back when I first moved into the state I currently live in, I had done a bit of couch surfing before finally being able to find a roommate. We moved into a rather old apartment in the quieter part of the big city. When I say old, I mean radiator heating, electricity so bad that running too many things in sockets popped the breaker, etc. I was the first to move in because my roommate had not yet gotten into the state. They were moving from Arizona. I had no furniture or anything, so I was sleeping on the floor. By default, I always close the door to the room I'm sleeping in. It's a force of habit, even if I'm alone in a place. One thing I noticed about the door is that it took quite a bit of force to get it shut. No big deal. I got it closed, went to bed, and that was that. When I woke up, the door was wide open. I found it strange because I had given the door a little tug before bunkering down on the floor. I didn't think much of it at the time until it kept happening. After a while, I noticed the apartment started to have a weird feeling. About a week later, my roommate finally arrived and moved in. On and off, weird things would happen outside of the door being open when I would wake up. There were sounds of someone rustling in the kitchen, footsteps long after both me and my roommate went to bed. I would know if it was them because they always turned the hallway lights on when going to the bathroom or kitchen. For the year and a half we lived there, That seemed to be the only disturbances. Nothing major. Fast forward to a year later, I had a friend from Colorado come visit for a week. The night crept up on us, and we were planning to hit downtown the following morning rather early. So we turned in for the night. They slept on the pull-out couch in the living room, and I went to my room and shut the door firmly. I passed out rather quickly. I was only out for an hour before I was awakened by a creaking noise and the jiggling of my bedroom's door handle. I opened my eyes only to watch the door slowly open and then stop after it was wide open. I assumed that maybe I just didn't shut it properly, but it still felt weird. I got up, closed the door, pulled the hood of the hoodie I was wearing to bed up. It was freezing in the dead of winter, and curled back up in bed. Only a few minutes had passed before I felt something grab the hood of my hoodie and yank it back, as if trying to tug me along with it. I went stone still and felt my heart racing. I had no idea what was happening, but I know I wasn't dreaming. Once everything settled, my nerves included, I tried to get a little more sleep. Morning came, and I went out of my room to meet my friend who was just waking up. I asked them if they had heard my door opening at all during the night. They were confused, answered no, and got up for their morning routine. I cannot explain what happened. I may have been amping myself up out of fear, or it could have very well been a spirit in that apartment. Both are plausible, but it doesn't take away just how scary it was in the moment. I think about it now and then, and if I'm going to be honest, I'm so glad I moved out of that apartment later that year. Growing up, my little brother and I shared everything. A room, an Xbox. We even shared the same cell phone for a few years. I never thought we would share the same nightmare. This was way back in 2013. I remember it because I was excited to see Iron Man 3. The movie sucked, but it was fun seeing all the different suits. Anyway, we ended up passing out late that night after a few rounds of Call of Duty. That's when I had one of the scariest nightmares of my life. I remember being in my bed, lying there, unable to move. My chest felt heavy, and my head was turned toward my little brother's bed. All I could see was this figure creeping over my little brother's sleeping body. It was tall and thin, completely cloaked in a Grim Reaper-type robe. Its back was facing me, and I could hear it breathing while it reached its shadowy, clawed hand toward my little brother's face. I tried screaming, but nothing came out. It reached out and picked him up while he was still asleep. I tried to move, but it felt like there was an elephant on my chest. This thing straightened its back while it stood up, holding my brother in its arms. Then it turned to face me, and its face was, well, it was and wasn't there. Its face was a constantly moving shadow that looked like a silk cloth with frayed edges. The edges flickered like flames, but there was no light. It stared down at me and whispered something I couldn't hear. Tears streamed down my cheeks while it turned and walked into the wall, vanishing from sight while still holding my brother. I tried with everything I had to move, but it felt like all the energy had been sucked out of me. I closed my eyes, and then I woke up. I was sweating everywhere and stood up immediately. I looked at my brother's bed, and he was still asleep. I started pacing around, popping my knuckles, trying to process what I'd just dreamt about. I wiped my sweaty hands on my boxers, grabbed my towel, and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. Before I left the room, my brother sat up and just looked at me. I looked back at him and said, "Glad you're okay. I just had the most messed up dream about you." He looked at me with an exhausted expression and said, "I had a messed up dream too. Some monster thing kidnapped me and I couldn't move. You didn't do anything but cry and go back to sleep." I stood there in shock. Did he and I have the same dream? I asked him, did the monster look like the Grim Reaper with a weird shadow face? I swear he looked like he just saw a ghost when I said that. He nodded and said, "Yeah. Did you see it too?" I nodded and told him about my dream. We both had the same dream with the same details, just from different points of view. We still have no clue how we were able to share a dream or what that sinister shadow figure was. I still think about that dream, and I can still remember it's void of a face. This happened over a decade ago when I was 12 years old. I live in a small town in Oklahoma, and in my neighborhood, the houses are fairly spread apart, separated by woods. It was a school day, so my grandma picked me up from school and brought me home. This was the first year that I got dropped off at my house alone. Before this, I would just go to my grandma's house after school. I would get dropped off at around 3 p.m. and my parents would be home around 4:30. Not that big of a deal. Today, for some reason, my dad wasn't going to be home until later, around 7, and my mom, a teacher, wouldn't be home until around 8 p.m. because she had parent-teacher conferences at the school. This happened in early fall, so it wouldn't even be dark until like 8:30 p.m. I did what I usually did when I got home. I ran upstairs, got on my Xbox 360, and played Minecraft with my friends. Today it was just me and my friend Seth. I was playing for about 2 hours when I heard a car door shut in my driveway. No one should have been here until like 7 p.m. My house is set up to where my upstairs has windows that look over my driveway. So with my mic on and controller in hand, I went to the window to see who it was. Maybe my dad got home earlier than expected. I looked outside. It was a red truck. No one I know drives a red truck. The person pulled into the middle of my driveway sideways, like he owned the place. When I looked out the window, I saw a man with a hat, wearing a big camo hoodie and jeans. It was September, so no one should have been wearing a big hoodie and jeans in Oklahoma. By the time I looked, he was already almost out of view, going up my walkway to my front door. I thought maybe it was one of my dad's friends or someone my dad hired to do something, but he would usually tell me if someone was going to be coming over. Soon after, I hear a knock at the door. Then another. I go to my other window that has a better view of the walkway up to my front door. I see the guy walking back down the walkway. I switch and go back to looking through the windows overlooking my driveway. I'm relaying all of this to Seth, still with my mic on. I tell Seth that he's walking back to his truck now. Instead, he walks past his truck and tries to open my garage side door. At this point, my heart sinks. I tell Seth that this guy just tried to get into my house. Mind you, it is literally broad day at like 5 p.m. Luckily, it was locked because sometimes we forget to lock it. After he tried the door, he starts walking to my back patio. I drop my headset and I quietly run downstairs to see what he is doing. I get downstairs and stand behind the wall so I'm not visible from the back door/living room windows. I just listen. I hear him try to open the door. Then I hear a thud. It sounded like he dropped a brick on the ground or something. At this point, I'm more scared than I've ever been. I wanted to call my parents or grandma, but I didn't have a cell phone yet. The only phone in the house was in my kitchen. I would have to cross my living room to get there, and he would be able to see me if I went into there. A few seconds after the thud, I peeked around the corner and he was gone. I run back upstairs and put my headset back on, telling Seth that he just tried to open the back door as well. As I'm telling him this, I hear a car door shut. This time, when I look out the window, he finally got in his truck. I looked at the truck closer, and I noticed the only thing he has in his truck bed was a crowbar and shovel. He sat in his truck for what felt like a few minutes. During this time, Seth told me to get my iPod and take a picture of his license plate. He was parked to where I couldn't see it. Then he drove backwards out of my driveway and down the road. A few minutes after he was confirmed gone, I went downstairs to see what the thud could have been. I get to the back door and see that the doormat was moved. Both big plant pots had been moved as well. He was looking for a key. Holy fuck. We have a hidden key back there too. The key to the back door was under one of the smaller plant pots on a ledge near the door, not the bigger ones that he had checked under. I went to the front porch, and all the pots looked like they had been moved too. I don't know what I would have done if he was able to find the key, or if he just broke in. After he left, I called my dad and told him what happened. When my dad got home, he had a cop come over, and I told him what happened and gave him a description. The guy never came back. Hey everyone, this is my first post on Reddit, and honestly, I've never been the kind of person to believe in ghosts or supernatural things, but after what happened that night, I don't think I'll ever be the same. I live in Pune, a bustling city in India, where life doesn't stop no matter the hour. It was a cold winter evening, and I was at my desk, sipping coffee, lost in my own world. My mom called out and asked me to get some medicine for her. Being the procrastinator that I am, I pushed it off, saying I'd go later. Time flew by, and soon it was 11 p.m. The streets were quiet, with the kind of eerie calm that only comes late at night. I grabbed my jacket, my bike keys, and headed out to the 24/7 medical store nearby. After picking up the medicine, I felt the urge to go for a late-night ride, something I often do to clear my head. There's a small bridge not too far from my place, surrounded by towering trees and shadowed by tall buildings in the distance. The bridge has a kind of haunting beauty to it, especially at night. Beneath it runs a dam, and when it's open, the rushing water creates a mesmerizing, soothing symphony. Here's where things get unsettling. In India, we don't bury the dead, we cremate them. And this bridge, it has 4 cremation sites around it, 2 at either end of the bridge. I didn't think much of it. I'm not superstitious, and honestly, I never believed in ghosts. It was midnight when I arrived. I parked my bike near the start of the bridge, lit a cigarette, and put on some music. The cold breeze whispered through the trees, and the distant sound of water made the setting almost surreal. At the far end of the bridge, I noticed a pyre burning, a body being cremated. I decided to stay where I was and not disturb the rituals. An hour passed, and I felt it was time to head home. But to do that, I'd have to pass the cremation site. I started my bike and began riding slowly. The closer I got, the more aware I became of the burning pyre. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, a shadow. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but as I got closer, the shadow became clearer, a man, squatting right next to the burning pyre. I slowed down to get a better look, and what I saw still haunts me to this day. He was scratching his head, violently, almost like he was trying to tear his scalp off. His movements were frantic, jerky, and unnatural. His hair was catching fire from the pyre, but he didn't seem to care. Instead, he rocked back and forth, making these guttural, animalistic sounds. My heart froze. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but my body wouldn't move. Then, he turned. In a flash, faster than anything I've ever seen, he snapped his head toward me. I'll never forget the sound, a sharp, crackling zap, like static electricity. His face was illuminated by the flames, and his eyes were hollow, empty pits that seemed to swallow the light around them. I don't know how, but I managed to kill my headlights and twist the throttle, desperate to get away without drawing his attention. But as I passed him, I felt it, a cold, piercing gaze, as if he was looking straight into my soul. I didn't dare look back. My hands trembled, my body was drenched in sweat despite the cold, and I rode faster than I ever have, praying he wouldn't follow. When I reached home, I locked every door and window, my heart still pounding in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I woke up with a high fever that lasted 2 days. When I finally gathered the courage to visit the bridge in daylight, there was nothing. No signs of anyone, no evidence of what I'd seen. To this day, I don't know if it was a ghost, a hallucination, or something else entirely. But one thing is certain, I'll never go near that bridge at night again. Thanks for venturing into the shadows with us on Nightmare Narratives. If this story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the so you never miss another terrifying tale. Have a scary story of your own? Share it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Who knows? Your nightmare might be our next feature. Sleep tight if you dare.